Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It's Sunday evening, which means it's match day review showtime. And for the second time this week, back by somewhat popular demand, I'm pleased to say that Jack Kershaw joins me. You can find him on X at JKAnalysis7. But as you all listen to me all the time, you all went and followed him on Wednesday when we did the match preview show. All jokes aside, though, if you haven't, please go and follow him. Some brilliant content from the young man, and he's absolutely flying in terms of followers. Jack, appreciate your time again. Yeah, not the best game to talk about. So we'll try and find some sort of talking points to get through.
Yeah, I think my four-goal thriller went out the window in the first 20 minutes. I think I kind of knew what sort of game it was going to be.
Yeah, it wasn't one that'd be first on any highlights package, and I like to label these ones probably similar to our game at Morecambe last week. Is if it was a film, it'd go straight to DVD. No one's going to be queuing up at the cinema to go and pay too much money to watch it. But we'll try and find
Yeah,
some moments to talk about. If we go all the way back to 2 o'clock, that's when the team news came out. I don't think there was too many surprises in terms of either lineup. So Fleetwood lined up in a 3-1-4-2 formation, and that was Harrington in goal, a back three of Wirradu, Holgate and Medley. Bonds was the holding midfielder. There was then a quartet of Johnson, Helm, Mayer and Hunt supporting a front two of Lonergan and Graydon. And for the Gills, it was a now familiar 4-2-3-1 system. Jake Turner in goal, a back four of Hutton, Captain Amar, Ogie and Clark. Mackenzie and Little patrolling and protecting. Nolan, Dieng, and Clark, the trio tasked with supporting lone frontman Wakelin. Jack, before we get into the nitty gritty and the whys and wherefores, I always write a paragraph down of what I think the game as an overview, and I've written plenty of endeavour from both sides. You had more ball and more chances. We probably had the best chances. Felt like a slightly better point for the Gills.
yeah, definitely. We tried to get the ball in the box a lot, but you defended the box very well with Aimer and Ogle. But it was in the first half, I think 40th minute maybe. We were trying to play out the back, and then Clark probably should have scored and put it in the bottom corner. And then you had one in the second half that was better than our chances. Obviously, we got goal ruled off for offside. Obviously, I couldn't see from behind the goal; it's away, but I think probably Lonergan was offside from poking it in. Yeah, definitely. I thought if someone was going to get the winner, it was going to be you guys because I didn't see any threat in the final third from us. I think we probably would have benefited from just one lone striker instead of two in Lonergan and Graydon. But yeah, I thought that if anyone was going to get the winner, it would have probably been you guys. But I don't think any side really deserves to get a winner.
No, that's right, and we'll get into them chances and the ones that you sort of fashioned as well. But yeah, it felt that the only time we really had real control was probably the last 20 minutes after we'd made a few changes. Aside from that, I felt we was having to defend our box and stay in our shape, and we struggled to deal with your system. So let's start first half. I've written down first 20 minutes settled into the pattern of you being the home side, passing and probing while we tried to stay in our shape. Only thing I think I can recall resembling an opportunity was the lad Hunt, I think, had a volley from the edge of the box that flew into our fans behind the goal. But aside from that, the first 15, 20 minutes, not a lot really happened, did it at all?
No, and obviously we tried to dominate more of the ball. I think that probably ruined what we tried to do in settled phases of possession. We didn't really gain authority of the game, even though obviously we kept the ball, most of it in our own half. We made about 450 passes, 201 of them came from our back three. So it shows how much we kept it in our own half. We couldn't really get it up the pitch quick enough like we want to do. Um, and credit to you guys because we want to be a transitional team. We want to hit sides on the counter attack. Obviously, you learnt from your lessons against Morecambe because obviously Bonner said that you were vulnerable for teams on the counter attack, and you didn't leave us space in behind where we could hurt you.
Agree to a degree. There was I thought one side of the pitch was where you was targeting, and I thought we struggled a little bit to deal with that system because I like the way you set up. It's very fluid. You look at it as a lineup on an app, or when you see the teams kick off, and it looks like you play one holding midfielder. So then you've got four in front, which isn't the usual way when you play a three at the back and two up top. It's usually 3-4-1-2. So it's slightly the other way round. You almost play two eights instead of a six and maybe an eight and then a 10, which I think confused us. And I certainly think we struggled for a period to get used to that. Unfortunately, the first sort of moment of note was an injury to your centre half and our former loanee, Zach Medley, who went down with absolutely no one anywhere near him, and I think signalled straight away that he probably realised it was quite a bad one. So I said on the Matchday Live, best wishes to Zach, because I thought he'd started the game fairly well. Have you had any sort of updates from Charlie Adam or anyone yet to say what it is? For me, it looks like it could be months. It looked like a sort of an ankle rupture or something like that, unfortunately.
Adam hasn't said about any like date when he could be coming back or how serious it is, but yeah, definitely. I think he must have slipped on the turf, and when Meepo came on, he was slipping a bit on the turf. Yeah, and luckily he actually still made a tackle when he was injured and stopped and stop you guys getting in behind. But yeah, I hope it's not too serious because I think Zach, even though it was the first 15 minutes, started the game really well. And I think, like you said about the weakness on the right hand side, where you were a bit too compact, and when Max Clark was tucking in too much, Medley could play the diagonal ball over to Carl Johnson, and we were in the final third. Then I thought his passing range was good, and I think obviously it's a centre back, but maybe if we did have Medley with his passing range, it could have benefited us more. Obviously, we had Urdu then on the left hand side, who's right footed and isn't left footed, so he's playing on his weak foot. But yeah, I've been really impressed with Medley, and I really hope that he's not out for too long because we have got Ronan Coughlin out too for I think about 6 to 8 weeks. Who's our like probably best centre forward and first choice centre forward. So injury list, it's little, but for how long they're probably out for, it's about 2 or 3 months. So it's not convincing, and obviously I give my best wishes to Zach Medley.
Yeah, absolutely, and I can only reiterate that as well because no one wants to see a player go off injured in them, well, in any circumstances. But you always fear a bit more when there's not a tackle or anything like that. You make an interesting point there because I was talking about maybe our right hand side, which was causing us an issue, but you've picked up on the fact that Max Clark was trying to stay compact, and I could see why he was doing that because I think Ramo Hutton was the fullback that was told potentially by Bonner to be high to try and create a problem then because obviously if you play a back three and you've got someone like Medley stepping out, there's then space to play into if we can pinch the ball. But I actually thought that the way you set up, and I want to talk about them at the end, there was a trio of players from your point of view that I want to sort of ask you a couple of questions in more detail. But I thought that side of the pitch was causing problems. So we'll get to that in a little while. But the first sort of half chance through any sort of pattern of play, I'm not talking about the Hunt volley, which just sort of fell to him on the edge of the box. But in terms of decent build-up play, I think the first chance come to you and I think it was Hunt again who was involved. It was a good delivery into the box from out wide, and Lonergan, I think it was, heads wide. And I think from our view, because I was sat in your main stand, I wasn't in the terrace, so I had a good view of the offside as well. But we'll talk about that in a minute. I thought we should do better. I don't know if you've seen any highlights. I've not had a chance yet, but I thought at first view he should have hit the target. I thought we'd managed to sort of free himself into space between the defenders, and it was almost like he didn't make proper contact, almost like it hit him in the nose or something, the way it sort of bounced into the turf and behind for a goal kick. But at that point, you must have been encouraged because you was having more of the ball and then you were starting to influence the game better in the final third through patterns of play.
Yeah, I don't think by then you actually had a shot then. So, it
I'm
could.
not sure we'd managed to complete 5 passes at that point, to be honest.
No, but from what I saw behind the goal, it was a free header for Lonergan, and he should have done better, really, with obviously not being picked up in the box. And Hunt made a good delivery, which probably wasn't the case for the full 90 minutes, I don't think. I think he had 2 accurate crosses out about 13, which for a left wing back, you want them to bomb up and down the pitch and you want them to be accurate and get the ball into 2 forwards who I think are just shy of being 6 foot. They're not great in the air because I don't think when we went up front we didn't have an outlet really to win aerial duels. But yeah, Lonergan definitely should have done better there. And if we went 1-0 up, maybe we would have got more momentum and more belief in ourselves to get 2 or 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a good point. It seemed both teams had the same sort of issue, didn't they? We've got no sort of target man, no focal point to play off at the moment. And it was a problem that hindered both sides throughout the 90 minutes, I think. And then you factor in that famous wind that blows across Highbury plenty of times, even when the sun's shining. It doesn't make for sometimes the most aesthetically pleasing encounter to watch. But you have to do what you do. You have to go with what you've got, and that's what both teams were still trying to do. I've written down that Gills were struggling with the Fleetwood shape issues down our right hand side, and this is what I thought. I didn't. It looked to me, because Medley at first being left-footed, so it gave you that natural balance. And then Wiradu, to be fair to him, to give him credit, he kept trying to do it as well, albeit he has to step inside and play the same way generally. But I thought that trio of him and the wing back and your centre midfielder that side, I thought they were causing Romeo Hutton and Jack Nolan loads of problems. To me, it looked like Jack Nolan didn't know where to go and step onto the player who had the ball, which was Medley coming across the halfway line. Because the fear was then if you do that, he then plays round him and suddenly then Hutton's being doubled up on. Or he didn't know whether to drop off and wait to engage into our half. But then how long do you leave it edge of the box? Then he seemed to just do neither. He was sort of just standing in betwixt and between, and that allowed you to play through us. But then, yeah, like you say, you made the interesting point about Max Clark. He was trying to be compact the other side, which then allowed, certainly with Medley on the pitch, that big switch in behind, and suddenly he was into the final third. So it's obviously something that Charlie Adams has worked on, because it's a system that you play and you play very well. But I was a little bit surprised by how poorly we sort of adjusted to it, because I think we played 3 games now and every side has played a back 3.
Yeah, it's a massive theme in League Two and League One where there's a lot of 3 backs and there's not many 4 backs. Obviously, each system has the pros and cons. But yeah, like I say about Jack Nolan, he didn't have the influence in the game like he would have wanted to. And I said on the preview show that probably your weakness would be your right hand side. And when Danny Mayer gets going, when he carries the ball at speed, he is a massive threat. I don't think in the first half we saw much of it, but in the second half, definitely when we wanted to get a goal, he stepped it up. And uh, and like I said, I probably expected more from Hunt on the left hand side, but I don't think there was real. I think it was from his own doing why Hunt didn't play as well as I thought he would. Not because obviously Hutton and Nolan stopped him in his tracks and maybe doubled up on him. Um, and also, like I say about Wiradu, he stepped forward with the ball. I think he won the most fouls about 3 or 4 times. So it showed that his acceleration was good. And when he steps from defence into midfield, that it caused you a lot of problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something we didn't really adjust to, I think, probably until that final 20 minutes when we made a couple of changes. The offside goal was the next big talking point. And again, it's decent play from yourselves. And I think that might have been the fact that you got another overload on Max Clark's side, because he was trying to be the compact centre half to allow Hutton to move further forward. But again, it was really decent bit of play, and you cut us open. Unfortunately, from your point of view, Lonergan goes too early. And I mean, I was sat, I don't know if you've seen my match day live, but my view was pretty much across the penalty area. So and I always look at attacking players. There didn't seem to be too much of a protest from any of the Fleetwood players. So I think he probably knew that he'd gone too soon. But it was another warning for Gills and another example of us not learning and not adjusting to the way that you were playing.
Yeah, and also it's 2 chances that Tommy Lonergan, if he scores a free header, then we go 1-0 up, and then obviously if he times his run well, then he scores again. But no, I think it probably, like I said, would have been offside because he didn't put up much of a protest, and I think even from behind the goal you could see that Tommy Lonergan was well ahead of your defence, but it was on the right hand side with Johnson fizzes a ball in, which I don't think Johnson. It's not his key aspect in what he does. He's not one. He's not a wing back that likes to get the ball in as much as a natural wing back would, like Hunt, and then we brought Patson on. I think our right hand side really is a weakness for getting the ball in the box, but he did incredibly well then, and he actually would have got an assist, which you don't get much of. And obviously, it was in like I say, 30 minute mark, and and when we got the first goal, like I said, with obviously if Lonergan scored the free header, we could have gone on and scored maybe 2 or 3 and got momentum in the game.
Yeah, because I think it's fair to say that all the while we were keeping it at 0-0, we were doing just enough to stay in the football match. But again, like you say, a goal changes a game naturally, and then we'd have to be more open. And I don't think at that point in the football match were we were anywhere near good enough in terms of using the ball. You mentioned Zach Medley, just to refer back to that one, Jack, and you said he managed to make a tackle. I think he just sort of sticks out a leg, doesn't he? Because I think if it's an easy ball for Jack Nolan, he's literally just got to avoid Zach Medley's leg, and I think Jacob Wakeling's got the freedom of that half to run into. And then Jacob Wakeling, his game is not playing against three big centre halves, which he's having to do at the moment because we've got people unavailable. But I'd have backed Jacob in that situation to run away and probably tuck it in, similar to his goal against Carlisle on the opening day. But just to ask from your point of view, what did you make of Gills at that point? Because I just thought everything that we did was it just looked a bit slack. We were very poor in our execution in terms of keeping the football and using the football in key areas.
Yeah, I said your main threat was probably Armani Little, and he couldn't really find them passes into maybe, Dieng or maybe Wakeling or out wide. He couldn't get the ball to them positions well, maybe because, we covered the ground well. We like our wing back stepping up. And I think one thing that I noticed that Wakeling didn't have any of the ball. He didn't have any impact of the game, even when he tried to stretch our back line. Harrison Holgate, he isn't the quickest, but he uses his body well to get with him. And I think, obviously, when you were trying to get Wakeling in behind, he had no joy. Jack Nolan had 15 touches in the game. He couldn't really influence the game, even from driving from deep like he did for the Carlisle goal. Obviously, he ran from his own half nearly. And I just think that there weren't much of a creative spark. Obviously, you brought Williams on late to go, and maybe if you had Williams on the pitch, you could have had more fluidity in the way you played. But then you will be missing Dieng up top, who was your main physical aspect, who I don't think made much of an impact up front as he would have wanted to in the physical aspect, because, like you say, he's against three very physical centre halves, and also Elliot Bond, who's also a physical midfielder. So it is hard to compete, and I think that's where it lacked, really. There weren't any killer pass to Jacob Wakeling where it could get him through. And so our centre halves couldn't catch up to him. And then Dieng didn't have much of an impact to the game when he played when he played behind Wakeling. And then obviously your first chance came from a mistake. So it showed that in settled phases of possession, there weren't much going forward, and it was more just capitalise on the mistakes.
Yeah, that's what exactly it felt like to me. Until that final 20 minutes, anything that we offered as an attacking sense was because of an error for yourself, and that was it, or set pieces, long throws, free kicks, and corners, that type of thing. And yeah, just back to Wakeling, looking at his heat map, he had 13 touches, no shots, and I think the main concern from our point of view was it looks like one of them touches was in the penalty box. The rest of it was all you can see. He's had to drop really deep to come and find the ball, and then, like you say, Dieng's not the quickest. Then you're leaving Dieng isolated, and as good as he is in the air, if he's then up against three centre half, you've still got essentially the same problem. So again, Fleetwood worked that really well. There was a couple of yellow cards. There was a weird one for Mark Helm, I think, got booked for diving, which we couldn't understand because we thought that Timmy Dieng had been booked. There was sort of I think it was Helm, sort of ran towards the edge of our box. Dieng come in and made the tackle, and for us, we all went, "Oh, that's not a yellow card. Like, all right, it's a free kick." And then suddenly we were taking the set play. I don't know what your view was, because obviously you're right at the other end of the pitch, but we honestly thought it was a foul and a free kick to Fleetwood because we were panicking about a set play sort of 25 yards out. But the referee, for some reason, only known to himself, gave your lad the yellow card for simulation and gave us the set play. I genuinely wasn't sure what was going on because I was raging. Like, everyone sat next to me, we was all screaming at the referee, "That's never a yellow card," that type of thing. And then realised that we were taking the set play. I really, really couldn't understand that one. He had a funny game, the ref. At some points, I thought he was doing really well. And then there was some really, really picky yellow cards that I just couldn't understand. That one being one, and there was a couple for, I think, Max Amer and Timmy Dieng that were sort of first tackles that I thought were really harsh as well.
Yeah, from behind the goal, we were actually cheering when we got that free kick, but then you got it instead, and we were thinking, well, Dieng's tackled Helm. I don't know how how that's gone your way, really. But no, Aimer, like I said, he didn't really um, do much in the game to warrant the yellow card. I think it might have been just the aggressive nature of the way he went into the tackle. Um, but yeah, I don't think the referee. Not that he didn't have control of the game, but there were a few questionable decisions where you're thinking, well, that should be a foul. Well, that should be a foul. But then he didn't give it, and it weren't one sided. He didn't do both sides a favour, I don't think.
Yeah, it all just seemed a bit muddled to me because I remember there was a sort of a really cheap free kick given to yourselves early in the game, and I said to someone next to me, I said, "That's fine, but he's got to do that for both teams now."
Yeah.
And then, like 5 minutes later, the same thing happened. Fleetwood player on a Gills player, and he lets it go, and that's when you start getting frustrated, and it always comes
Mm.
back to consistency. But I've had this chat 1,000 times, and I'll have it 1,000 more about referees at this level. The big moment for us came courtesy of a defensive error, and Jaden Clark did well to pinch it from our point of view. And then he was eye to eye with Dave Harrington. See what he's trying to do, Jaden Clark. He looks like he's just sort of trying to guide it in off that far post, but I don't know if it's adrenaline or a lack of composure. Some people said lack confidence, but he's scored 3 or 4 in pre-season, so I don't think it was that. But unfortunately, from our point of view, it drifted wide of the far post. But I think it's fair to say that if we'd gone in at the break 1-0 up, we'd have probably had to sort of hand over our credit cards and buy you all a drink because it would have been absolute robbery at that stage. But yeah, I've written down at half-time, Fleetwood much the better side, Gills lacking composure and execution at key times, and we were making it hard work for ourselves.
Yeah, because I say about that chance, it came from a mistake. Bonds, I think, gave the ball away. He took too much time on the ball, which he does do. He wants to be calm, and he normally does recover himself well, but obviously in that instance he didn't. And maybe Clark's, he's coming up against Harrington, who's a big keeper. He spread himself well, but you're thinking it's not an angle where it's impossible to score from.
No.
And obviously, if you went 1-0 up at half time, you'd be laughing.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and it obviously changed the game in the second half because in the second half, I didn't think the game opened up much. I don't think that there weren't any. I mean, obviously you went on the counter a couple of times, but then we stopped it well, and I think bar a few of maybe counter attacks, there weren't much going for either side to make it an open game. Really, there weren't. And I would say there weren't much urgency. I know we got the ball in the box a lot, but then there was some shots where we had, and you're thinking, you've got to do better than that. It's like just putting it straight at the keeper and maybe, you know, take more shots from outside the box. There's one where Elliot Bonds put it up in the air, and you're thinking, just go for the overhead kick, just try and make something. But then he didn't. He went for the safe option. You're thinking, just try and do something.
Yeah, it was a game that was crying out for a bit of quality, and I think we said sort of midway through the second half, this game, if it is going to be won by either side, it's going to have to be a howler akin to
Yeah.
the one that created our chance, or someone smacking one in the top corner from about 5 miles out. But unfortunately for either side, that didn't come. In terms of that second half, I've pretty much written down what you just said. I thought the pattern of the game didn't really change. I could understand Bonner giving it sort of 15 minutes to see if we could get a foothold with the players that were out there, but the pattern didn't change at all. We were still giving the ball away fairly cheaply. You were still trying to find a way through. But I thought we was defending our box really well. We weren't great with the ball, but in terms of defending our 18-yard box and our 6-yard box, I thought every time the ball come into it, there was headers and there was blocks and there was people willing to put their body on the line. And there were no clear-cut chances, were there? I think if you look at your total shots, I think about a third of them at least were blocked at source rather than getting through for Jake Turner to have to make a save. And then if they did, like everything in the game, it was fairly routine for the goalkeepers, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think out of 15 shots, we only had 3 on target, so it says a lot there. And then, I mean, we had a 1.73 expected goals. I think I don't really get how that number's been made up, to be honest. I don't think 1.73 is really a fair reflection because our shots straight the keeper. I think our best chance was when we were on the left, and then it was whipped to the back post, and Mark Helm. I think it was one of your players who blocked it, or the keeper saved it maybe, and he snuck in at the back post, and then we got a corner. It was only, I think, 2 minutes into the second half, so that's when we thought, right, we're a different side in the second half. We're going to go for it. We're going to create better chances. We're going to get the ball in the box better, but then it just didn't happen. And I mean, it's probably coming across that I'm saying that we were too poor. Like you said, you defended the box really well, and we didn't really have a physical striker to compete against your physical centre half in Aimer, who him and Ogle, they wanted to clear the box every chance he got it. Rob McKenzie came back to help. I thought out of possession he was very good, and we spoke about on the preview. It gives a bit of balance in that midfield for you guys. You've got Little who wants to create something. He'll drop deep. He'll try and make a forward pass. Then you've got Rob McKenzie, who's brilliant out of possession, and he brings a bit of aggressiveness. He wants to press in the midfield, and I think that also helped when also tracking the midfield runs. I said before that Danny Mayer, I think, had more authority in the game in the second half when he drove forward, but he just wasn't enough. And I think with Mayer, sometimes he doesn't shoot when we want him to, and he doesn't drive forward when we want him to. And that's sometimes a frustrating bit. Maybe that's a system he's playing. I don't know. Charlie Adam did say that he's come out of his shell more. But no, but there weren't anything to cheer about for both sides. I think that you had one shot where Hudson put it out for nearly a throw-in. I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, at first from where I was stood, I'm thinking, bloody hell, that's going in that, and then he's going all the way on the other side, and you're thinking, yeah, that's not a good shot. But no, there weren't anything for either keeper to do, and I think 0-0 is really the fair reflection of the game.
This is why we get opposition fans on, because obviously we spoke about it on the coach home, and we said like it's a better point for Gills. Like Fleetwood, if they'd nicked it, I don't think too many people would have said too much. But then we had the better chances to caveat that. So I suppose, yeah, I suppose you do get to the point where you say a draw was probably maybe about right. But I think if we'd nicked it, there'd have been more uproar from your fans than if you'd nicked it. I don't think we'd have been able to say, oh, well, we deserve to stay level in the game as much as if we'd pinched it off of you. But we made a couple of changes, I think, after that sort of opening 15 minutes of the second half, Jack. I think we took off Jack Nolan, who was completely ineffective, unfortunately. Just had one of them days where nothing came off. Jacob Wakeling was withdrawn as well because he just wasn't able to get into the football match. So Aaron Rowe came on the left. I think Jaden Clark moved over to the right-hand side, and we put Joe Bode on, who's a youngster who probably would have gone out on loan if not for all the injuries at the moment, because we had Elliot Nevitt, Josh Andrews unavailable. Then Ollie Hawkins didn't travel as well, who's ended up going from being transfer listed to being fourth choice centre after now suddenly being the target man when available. So again, we were still having to sort of mix and match a little bit, and I think that's probably why Timmy Dieng stayed on the pitch a little longer, because he was coming back from a hamstring tweak and he looked like he was blowing second half. I'm not going to lie. Again, it still didn't have an immediate effect on the pattern of the game, though. We were still on the back foot, I thought, and we were still lacking cohesion all over the pitch, aside from defending our box. And then there was a half chance again, I think, is it Odobiko? Is that the lad you call?
I mean, we call him Meepo. He's got Meepo on the back of his
Meepo,
shirt, so
which
we
is
call
easy.
him
We'll go with
Meepo.
Meepo then, yeah. So Meepo did well. I think he found himself half a yard, but in keeping with the whole encounter, it was straight at Jake Turner, and it's one of them. If it goes past him, it's an error from the goalkeeper. We then made another change to try and influence things, and this was when I started to think that we were just starting to get more of a foothold. We took Timmy Dieng off, who had completely run his race and was on empty, and brought George Lapsley on, which I thought, and I know you mentioned Johnny Williams didn't get on, but I think it was more of a George Lapsley game. I think he just brings a bit more bite into midfield. He's willing to put his foot in a bit more than Johnny. Johnny's great, picking up pockets of space, being technically very good and creating, but it wasn't a game for being pretty, was it? I don't think at that point, or at any point, to be fair. So I could understand why George Lapsley came on, obviously off the back of a goal last weekend as well. And that's when I finally thought that we were playing the game in better areas. We were pinning you back, and we actually saw the ball more consistently in your half.
Yeah, and it was when your fans in like the last 20 minutes, 25 minutes, you got chanting, and then I was stood next to Nappers and we're thinking they're gonna go and score here, aren't they, or something, in typical Fleetwood way. We dominate the ball, and then you get like your second clear cut chance, and then you score it when we've had 16 shots and we don't even put about 10 on target. But also about Ollie Hawkins, I was thinking before the game, obviously him and Lapsley, I thought both of them would have been on the bench. Obviously Lapsley was, but I thought maybe in a tight game, and then you haven't got the physicality up top. Maybe Hawkins would have give you that outlet and would have battled hard in both boxes, which he would have needed to do with the amount of box defending you did. And obviously, like I said, Lapsley, he scored against Morecambe. It weren't the prettiest goal, and maybe he could have recreated one of them not pretty goals. But I think the substitution of Aaron Rowe maybe uh, probably was to do with his out of possession work rate. Obviously, Jack Nolan, he won't want to do the defensive work, but Aaron Rowe will. He's a flexible player. Um, and I think Mark Bonner said that we changed to not part of the bus sort of so, but to come more defensive, which I didn't really agree with to an extent because he brought Phoenix Patterson on, who's normally a winger playing wing back. We changed Lonergan for Meepo. We changed Bonds, who's a 6, to Virtue, who's an 8. Um, and then when you got the goal kick, you could tell that you were playing for the draw because Jake Turner didn't really but want to hoof it long. And I'm not saying that's a negative because, like I said, Gillingham coming to Fleetwood and getting a point and a clean sheet, hard working is great. And I think that reflecting uh, when it comes to the end of the season, you'll be like, yeah, that's a very good point, even though it weren't pretty, and that's got us to where we are. It obviously, if you're battling for a playoff spot, which I think you will. But yeah, I think that there just wasn't much urgency. Obviously, uh, we got the ball into the final third a lot, but then we didn't create enough. Obviously, we had 16 shots on paper, but it was more quantity over quality for us and quality over quantity for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that's a great way to sum it up. I mean, quality is probably not a word that was keeping with the game as a whole. But yeah, in terms of the better chances, we definitely had them, but you had more of them. And one man that did create his own chance was the man you just mentioned. That was Aaron Rowe, and I thought we did really well in that instance. I think he was holding his shape and his width really well, and then managed to dart inside with a little drop of the shoulder and create that half a yard. And that was probably the only time in the game where either keeper was fully extended, and it was a really good stop from Dave Harrington to get down low with his left hand and palm it away into a non-dangerous area. Because the fear there is you get a hand on it, but it sort of bounces into the middle of the penalty area, and then someone's got to tap in. So I thought it was probably an even better save than you actually realise at first glance, because it's a good save because you see him get down, but it's the fact where he's got the ball to as well. But yeah, aside from that, we've said no keeper was. I don't think any keeper had to really dive. I think Jake Turner at the end had to come out and smother one that was a sort of ball broke into the penalty area, and one of your players was trying to get on the end of it. But apart from that, either keeper was really just coming, claiming and punching crosses and dealing with stuff that was at times over hit or under hit and fetching it from the goal, behind the goal to take set plays and that type of thing. It was at this point I thought the game finally felt end to end in sort of the last 10, 15 minutes. There was half chances for Matty Virtue, I think, who had one straight down the throat again of Jake Turner in a good area. You had Graydon had a diving header, I think, that went wide, maybe could have done a bit better. But looking at the highlights, in fairness to him, I think it's always hard to score, especially when you're off the floor trying to do an old-fashioned diving header, but the ball's outside the near post, so it's difficult to arch your neck to try and almost head it behind yourself. I think if he's middle of the 6-yard box, that becomes a much easier chance because then he's got two corners to aim at, but all he's trying to do there is use the pace of the ball, and unfortunately it comes off the wrong side of his head. Then we had another chance, and this was, again, I can't really remember if it was good play or there was an error from Fleetwood, so you might be able to help me out here. But suddenly George Lapsley was away, sort of in the wide right channel and bearing down on the penalty area. I don't think it's as easy a chance, Jack, as the Jaden Clark one, where I think Jaden had options to slot it under Harrington or go near post and clip it over him, or even go round him. I think George Lapsley's wide on that penalty area, so all he can do is aim for that far stick, and it just goes wide. I think George thought there was a touch from Harrington as well because he went absolutely mad at the fall for the lino, and then the referee, but didn't get his corner kick. But do you recall what the build-up to that was? Because I don't really recall what the build-up was. I just remember thinking, oh, suddenly George Lapsley's away and we're in on goal.
I can't remember personally, but probably if it was anything to do, it probably would have been a set piece from us. Maybe, um, obviously, in a wide space, you've nicked the ball back and then you've got on the transition because you did do that a lot, like you said in the last 15 minutes. And Carl Johnson was the main one bringing it forward, or Ryan Broom when he went back. Um, and also, like I said about the keeper, I mean, it was more of a game where it fit for Harrington, commanding his box well and making himself big and the chance from Rowe from behind the goal. I'm thinking because the ball's bouncing, Harrington obviously got down quick, but then it was bouncing. Thinking, God, that's going to go over him here. But then obviously when he makes a save, you're happy and you're thinking, yeah, that's a great save because obviously at that point in the game, keepers will be worrying, right? You can't make a mistake here. You got to get your mind focused on it. You got to just punch the balls away,
Mm.
which I think Harrington was actually composed. He caught the ball a lot when he was under pressure, and um, and I think it was just a game where both keepers obviously didn't have anything to do. Turn every shot that Turner faced, it was straight at him. And then like I said about Graydon's header, he had one in the first half. He's again going for the diving header, and you're thinking, come on, go with your feet. Like, it's at a point where you can't move your body quick enough to actually get that header on target. It's just going to go away, and maybe that's just poor decision making and uh and I think Graydon obviously he's I think 23 or something like that. So
Mhm.
maybe he does need a bit more decision making to improve on in that scenario. And I think maybe if he went with his feet in a couple of times, he could have maybe at least worked Turner a bit more.
Yeah, potentially. Because I don't think it comes from a lack of confidence because he had two in his first three games in league and cup,
Yeah.
didn't he, before? So I don't think it would be that at all. But yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, when you're young centre forwards and they're trying to make their way in the game. It could just be a bit of over eagerness to try and impress, and you're that desperate to score the winner, and that's when you tighten up, so to speak, instead of relaxing. But in terms of the rest of the game, I think we made one more chance. Johnny Williams come on, but it was essentially too late to make an impact for Jaden Clark. I thought it was a brave substitution from Mark Bonner, and you alluded to a comment that Bonner made about parking the bus in terms of Fleetwood. Is that the full interview? I've not actually seen yet. I've only watched the 1 minute clip that went on social media last night. I've not had a chance to watch the full interview if that's up. So you're ahead of me in that sense. But yeah, I liked the substitution. I don't like Jules actually being shunted out to the right hand side because he's better in the middle. But so is Johnny Williams. So it's rock and hard place in that sense. But I thought we was brave with 10 minutes to go to have Joe Bode as a centre forward. You've got Aaron Rowe wants to run at players. You've got essentially two tens in Lapsley and Johnny Williams on there. You've got Armani Little still trying to run forward from the centre of the park and just leaving Robbie McKenzie. So almost cheating and just leaving us maybe 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 in that key area, which was brave in our sense. But unfortunately, it didn't have there was no sort of chance for that sort of approach to factor in the game at all because it just sort of drifted to its natural conclusion. I just thought the final 5 minutes passed by with both teams finally going, we'll take a clean sheet, we'll take the point, and this is a decent result, and we move on to next week.
Yeah, well, obviously in the previous show, I said that it would be a draw, and I would be happy with a draw. Obviously, the goals didn't come, which I would have liked, but no, you can't complain at a clean sheet. Both sides are still unbeaten, um, and obviously that you guys had obviously a full week rest, but it is a lot of miles to travel from Swansea, then to Morecambe, and then Fleetwood. Obviously, we're at home, and and like I said earlier, that if you guys got the win, we would have been absolutely kicking ourselves, thinking we've got to create better chances, and I just don't think there was enough there for us to nick it. Maybe we might need to work on that. We've only scored 3 goals so far, but we scored 2 in the cup, so I don't think that's a weakness for us. But then it's nice to get 2 clean sheets. Both of us are on 2 clean sheets now,
Yep.
which is obviously good to see because obviously you were a well drilled. Well, I'd say a better side than most sides in League Two last season defensively because of what Neil Harris and Stephen Clements brought to the club in terms of the play style, and obviously it's good to see that Mark Bonner wants to be attacking, but yet he's keeping a good defensive shape to maintain clean sheets as well as obviously scoring four on the opening day and capitalising on mistakes. And then for us, we conceded 80 odd goals last season. It was far too much. We've had a total revamp of the defence, and then we're now keeping clean sheets. And we're going into the final 10 minutes, not worrying that we're going to concede.
Yeah, absolutely. And every good side's built on a solid base at the end of the day, isn't it? And if you keep clean sheets, you're not losing football matches, and then you only need one to pinch it. Of course, we all want to score more, and we both want to be better in terms of what we offered Saturday afternoon in an attacking sense. But I think there's certainly positives for both teams to take out of the game. I watched your mate Ben's video back last night, and he says that there's a need maybe to get a centre half and a centre back in this week, depending on the nature of Zach Medley's injury and the fact that you say you've got Ryan. Is it Ryan
Graydon.
Who's out injured at the moment? No, who's your centre forward that's out?
Oh, Ronan Coughlin, sorry.
Ronan Coughlin, sorry, yeah. So maybe you need to get one in at each end of the pitch. I want to talk about your left-hand side, though, again. This is what I mentioned earlier on in the video. I thought that triangle, and I know you've said you weren't over keen on his performance. I actually thought he was quite decent. Just lost the lineup, 2 seconds. Yeah, I thought so. Initially, it was Zach Medley, that left-sided centre half, and then you had Mackenzie Hunt as the wing back, who was the one that was tasked to try and run in beyond, and Danny Maher, who was flitting about in midfield. I actually thought that trio of Medley and then Wiradu plus Maher and Hunt was really, really good, and that's what caused us the problems. I thought Hunt was good at getting up and down. Your centre half, be it Medley or Wiradu, stepping into midfield caused an overload and allowed you to play the game in more dangerous areas. And I like Danny Maher in the sense that he likes to pick up pockets of space. He can drift out wide if Hunt gets bombed on, or he can make runs in between the two centre forwards. And I thought that was like a little triangle that caused us a real problem throughout the game. And we I don't think ever really sort of learnt how to deal with it properly until perhaps the last 20 minutes when we made a couple of changes and adjusted the shape a little bit and the personnel. But you said you didn't think Hunt was as good as he can be. But yeah, no, I thought them three really stood out. And just looking at Mackenzie Hunt's stats, 73 minutes played, he had 64 touches, 87% pass completion, 2 key passes, 2 accurate crosses, 50% in terms of long ball success. 3 shots all off target, unfortunately, but willing to have a go, like you said, and trying to make stuff happen. He won 50% of his ground duels and 50% in the air as well. And he did his defensive duty, 3 clearances, 2 tackles, and was only dribbled past once. I actually thought he had a really good game. And like I say, that trio of him and Maher and your left-sided centre-back, I thought were really, really impressive and caused us problems.
Yeah, maybe just obviously being a fan of the club that Hunt plays for. Maybe I'm just being overcritical and maybe wanted more from Hunt because he's got an assist against Grimsby and got an assist against Notts County, and thought his final third delivery probably could have been better. But no, like you said, that as a trio in settled phase of possession, we like to work it there. And I thought when we went into our wide players, whether it be Helm on the left and Johnson on the right. I thought that was better than going into Bonds in the midfield. And the trail, like I said, Wiradu steps in, he created an overload. Danny Mayer just needs that confidence to play just a full 90 minutes of just freedom and having belief in yourself that when you do carry the ball forward, it creates problems for team and that you can do it. I mean, he's 33 and we just see too much of him maybe going backwards and playing the safe pass. And when he doesn't play the safe pass and when he goes forward, he's great and he's a massive threat. And I think we saw more of it in the second half where something needed to happen for Fleetwood to score a goal because clearly the chances that we had were too just straight to the keeper, and that's where the centre forward problem lies. And I woke up this morning and I've seen from a source that Jake Young has had interest from Fleetwood. Graham Alexander at Bradford said that they've accepted a bid, and I would be really happy with Jake Young because we were interested in Gary Medine and he's gone to Hartlepool now. An experienced target man was apparently said he weren't a right fit for the club. And we're thinking, well, we want a target man because we've got no outlet um, to play off maybe goal kicks because I don't know if you know, we played about with it too much in our own half. We tried to play out the back and it didn't really work.
You
And
mentioned that in the preview as well, didn't you? You said that it could
yeah,
cause problems, and obviously it nearly did a couple of times, especially the chance for Jaden Clark right at the end of the first half. Yeah,
and we don't have that physical threat up top. And we're thinking if Medine is the target man we need and he's not the right fit, what type of striker are we going for? And Tyler Berry apparently failed his medical, who was ex Oxford and I think was playing in Denmark. But now we're going in for Jake Young, and he's a vibrant threat. Obviously, 16 goals for Swindon last season. And I'd be really happy with that pickup. We definitely got the money. I think for me, it's only us or Notts County who would really be going for him and have like maybe the financial power because MK Dons are interested in a Mansfield striker. I don't think any other club is really looking to get a centre forward in now. But also, like I said about Medley going off injured, it's because Charlie Adams said he wants to have um, a short squad. He wants to go quality over quantity, which at the moment we've only got two injuries. But when it becomes 2 months that they're out and then other players are picking up knocks, you're thinking this is where we need the squad depth to fill in. And he said that he wants to maintain the academy lads coming in and out the first team squad, which we like to do. We like to utilise the academy because it's very good. I think it's category 2 now that we've upped it to.
okay.
But no, I think just with the injuries now, with Coughlin, who's our main centre forward, and we're now relying on Tommy Lonergan, who hasn't had much game time in England. Meepo, he's coming from Portugal and he hasn't played in the EFL for about 1 or 2 years now. He hasn't had the game time in Portugal that he would have wanted. He said that in an interview. And you're
Okay.
thinking, are we going to be relying on these guys for the whole season to manage us to get the goals that we need? And then in the defence, relying on maybe academy lads that sometimes could be too scared to, be settled on the ball and actually be composed. And I think one or two players in would suit us nicely. I think Reece Bennett and a United Academy centre half is linked with the club on loan, and then Jake Young centre forward. There's two players there that I would happily take and would fulfil the squad depth that we need in them positions.
Yeah, weirdly that Jake Young's come up in a Gills fans WhatsApp group that I'm involved with, and apparently Brad Gallinson's now following him, but I can't see it being us. There's a local journalist called Ben Watts on social media who's tweeted this morning and said he asked Mark Bonner about transfers after the game, and he's been told that apparently they're not expecting us to do anything.
Yeah,
So
because
I can't see it being us because we'd have like 7 or 8 centre forwards. It'd be ridiculous.
yeah, because obviously you got the lad who came on. If Ollie Hawkins stays, he can play there. You've got
Yeah,
Nevitt, Andrews coming back, and then you've got Wakeling. You've got 5 centre forwards there. You can't really juggle all
and
them around and then promise them game time.
so we had Wakeling started. Joe Bode came on. Nevitt and Andrews to come back. Um, Ollie Hawkins can play there. We've got Marcus
Mm.
Wiley, the lad that we got out of Enfield Town
Yeah,
on loan. So that's 6 centre forwards. It can't be us. I can't see it at all. So, no, it's interesting that you said because there were people talking about it on the coach last night on the way back about the Jake Lincoln trying to work out who it was. And I think it can only be you or Notts County. I think Notts County need a backup to Jatta. I don't think McGoldrick is good enough to play as a centre forward in that system for Notts County anymore. He's more of I think he plays deeper now, which is naturally what happens when the legs start to go. So yeah, I think it's got to be between you and potentially Notts County, but that probably means that someone weird to go and sign him now. In terms of Gills, back to the game, Jack, before we start wrapping this episode up, who did you think was the most impressive? Because it wasn't a game for our attacking players. I think it was more to do with probably, and in similar in the way that I said about that little triangle on your left-hand side were the ones that were causing a problem for us. So I thought it was probably Jake Turner and that square in front that sort of kept us in the game. The two centre halves and the two midfielders that were deeper, I thought were probably our most impressive footballers on the day in terms of. So Jake Turner did what he had to do well. Then you had Ogie and Amar, the centre halves, and then Little and McKenzie were really good. I thought.
Yeah,
If I had to pick one, I'd probably go Ogie or McKenzie as man of the match for us. But how did you see it?
no, I probably agree with you because, like, the main talking point, really, what we've had is about the defensive work that obviously Aimer and Ogie had, and then I praise McKenzie. He's a very good hard worker and out of possession. But I thought Armani Little did very well because he's not the best defensive player, because he wants to be more of a technical player. But I thought when Mark Helm was on the pitch, he man marked him very well, and he didn't give him much room at all to work in. But no, I would probably give it to Rob McKenzie.
Yeah, I'm pleased you said that because I think we mentioned it in the preview, and I've said it a few times this season. He's really benefiting from playing a whole pre-season in one position,
Mm.
and he's starting to potentially lose that sort of jack of all trades, master of none tag that unfortunately follows him around because he's decent in about 3 or 4 positions. You end up sort of being the backup in all of them. So I'm so pleased for him, but again, equally excited when we get Ethan Coleman back as well because it gives us more options. I'd imagine in terms of, I want to ask you about Gills on the whole because we weren't great. I know that, you know that. Everybody in the ground knows that. We probably didn't play anywhere near our potential. But is it, as an outsider at the moment, is it difficult to gauge Gillingham because of the fact that we've still got Connor Masterson, Ethan Coleman, Josh Andrews, Ollie Hawkins, Elliot Nevitt, Bradley Datt, Ewan Williams, all unavailable? I'm guessing you judge Gills in a month, do you? When they've got everyone back and then you can't use the injuries. Not that I'm using it as an excuse, but they're
Yeah.
factors at the moment that are playing a part in how we're having to play in terms of like we're having to play a centre forward that's not used to playing on his own and sort of pushing Timmy Dieng further forward. But what did you make of the Gills and do you only see us getting better once them players all become available?
Yeah, definitely. Could you say about the injuries? It's not that using an excuse, it's just inconvenient. Everyone has injuries, and then it's just how you cope with it. And
Yeah.
you cope with it very well. And I've mentioned at the miles travel in the preview in this, it's really important because obviously um with you guys being down at Kent and it being with the Northern League too, you'll just have to get used to it. And if you're starting like you are, traveling like that, I think Mark Bonner said in his interview that we just got to shut up and just get used to it because we're going to be traveling all these miles and it's going to be tough, obviously fitness wise. But from what I've seen, I've been impressed. Obviously, first game this season, maybe like you said, the scoreline flattened you against Carlisle. You still put 4 goals in in the back of the net, and also you capitalised on good mistakes. And I think obviously when you get Nevitt back, you get Dak to full fitness, you get Andrews, you get Masson back. You're going to be a very good squad because on the left you've got Max Clark who's better defensively. You've got Hudson who's very good going forward, and him and Nolan I think will cause a lot of problems. It's just getting them two in the game where obviously yesterday it weren't a game that you could get them in, and maybe it's just about getting maybe playmakers of Little and Williams in to get them on the ball, and well, and also Dak because when Dak comes back, and maybe you have Nevitt as a presser, and then he's a he's a vocal point when you go long, and then you have Dak picking up the pieces and creating something. Your front four will probably be one of the best in the league, and it'll be really threatening because you've also, I said about Nolan, you don't want to really trap back, but then on the left hand side you can have Aaron Rowe who will happily do his work out of possession. Then your left hand side will be really hard to break down.
Mm.
Um, but now I think you've uh, done remarkably well for obviously the injuries that you've had. And you've got 2 clean sheets. You've scored 5 goals. You've beat Carlisle, who obviously came down from from League One. Yes, you probably on paper uh, going into the game should have beat Morecambe more, but it's just about the resilience to keep a clean sheet and then get a goal where maybe it's not the prettiest and it's not the best attacking football you want to play, but it's a goal, you can pluck it out of nowhere. And then obviously you've drawn against us who have just come down from League One. So from an outsider point of view, if I were a Gillingham fan, I'd be over the moon with this start, with obviously the injuries, and then also that Mark Bonner's implementing his style well. Because like I said, going forward, you're scoring goals against Carlisle, and I think it will extend with obviously when you have Nevitt and maybe Wakeling sort of playing as a front two, maybe if Bonner wants to go for a 4-4-2, and then you sound at the other end of the pitch where you're missing Connor Masterson. So I think my prediction was sixth. I think you will finish in around the playoffs. I know it's early days, and I'm going off 3 games, but I have been impressed from your start.
Yeah, and I think equally, I've been super impressed with Fleetwood. I'm lucky enough to have watched 2 of your games in full now, because obviously being there yesterday, and I watched the game against Notts County on Sky Sports Plus last weekend, and I've been really, really impressed with what Charlie Adams doing there. I think I've probably sort of underestimated you a little bit in terms of Charlie Adam and what he's implementing. Certainly didn't realise how well you ended last season when I did the prediction, so that's something to look at. And I think I've probably got you probably too low in terms of my season prediction. Again, it's only 3 games and there's a long way to go, but I had you 19th, and that's not with any disrespect to the squad that you had, or Charlie Adam, or any sort of behind the scenes stuff that's been going on in recent months that may cause an issue. But I know how difficult it is in this league when you come down to League One, because I remember when we did it a couple of seasons ago, and none of the quartet that came down, including us, finished higher than 13th. So I know it's a tough league to sort of bounce back in straight away. But yeah, after 3 games, I think I've probably underestimated Fleetwood. You've got the makings of a very good side there. I think you're probably 1 or 2 away from being top 7, I think, honestly, at the moment. My concern would be, which is something you've said as well, you've had all that possession yesterday, but you've not taken good chances when they've come along. But like you said, I think on the preview on this, you seem to be a better side playing on the counter attack, when you can attack teams quickly in transition and turn them round a lot quicker. I think when you're at home, the tendency is that the game's on you to try and break it down. So we almost played the Fleetwood role from the Notts County and the Grimsby game that you did. So if you can learn how to win games when the onus is on you to make the run in, then I think you'll be fine. Yeah, like I hope Zach Medley recovers quickly, because he looked a real player yesterday afternoon in the 15 minutes that we saw. Again, it's a very sort of small segment, but no, really enjoyed my first visit, Jack. The sun came out, which was nice because it belted it down all the way up there, and I've really enjoyed chatting to you this week, so I appreciate your time, mate. I really do.
No, thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed it too, and unfortunately, people might not think that I'm as clued up on Fleetwood as I make out to be with my prediction, but no, I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully, it's a good season for both of us.
Yeah, fingers crossed. That'd be great. Gills fans, Fleetwood fans, if you're still watching at this point, like I always say, thank you very much. We are on the road to 4,000 subscribers. That is the target for the rest of the season. So please consider hitting that like button. Please keep clicking that subscribe button. It's absolutely free. If you've got a Google Mail account, you don't have to do any more than just hit that button. If you want to put that, excuse me, if you want to put notifications on to know when I'm nattering about football to people like Jack and other fans, then absolutely do that as well. But I really appreciate all the support that continues to be thrown our way. Yes, we'll be back middle of the week with another preview show as we look ahead to next week's home game against Chesterfield. We return to Priestfield after feels like we've travelled to the moon and back over the last 10 days with 3 away trips. And then, of course, we'll be back inside the Priestfield Stadium next Saturday for another Matchday Live. Thanks again to Jack for his time. Please follow him. His details are in the description at the bottom of the video. Please keep hitting that sub button. And, of course, until the next time, up the Gills.